Hey everyone, what's up? This is Uri for Guerrilla Poker with another high stakes hand history review. I know you guys are excited, I sure am, so let's get into it. So, this hand is played heads up between Darrell Goh and Kyan Mokri. Darrell Goh, also known as FourSixFour, a long-time successful high stakes player, very good, very aggressive guy. Kyan Mokri, I do not know personally. I don't know if he's been around as long, but I know he has been battling it out recently and also a very good, very aggressive player. So, raised pre-flop 2.5x by Darrell. These guys are playing 100, 200, fairly deep. Kyan calls, and we get to the flop of 10, 9, deuce, rainbow. Here Kyan checks, and Darrell makes a 75% pot-sized bet. Now, this is the first spot in the hand where we pause and we talk about the bet size. And I haven't researched this exact spot. Obviously, the fact that Darrell is going with a big bet means he has a polarized betting range in this spot, which means he's not going to be c-betting everything. He's going to have a check-back range. And then there's this whole art to how to make your check-back range tricky enough that when you check back, the other guy can't just run you over. So, definitely a more complicated strategy than just betting small. And whenever you see this, any size is kind of okay as long as you play the size well. So, I don't know that this is necessarily the ideal size, but it's also not important that it's the ideal size. All sizes are fairly close in expected value, believe it or not. But you need to kind of slot hands in there that make sense, and that's a complicated part. And I can tell you guys, for example, a hand that wouldn't make sense. I'm sure you guys can find quite a few, but the most obvious one is pocket eights. Should not be c-betting this size. And generally big sizes are good for your strong hands and worse for your medium hands, because medium hands need to go into kind of more defensive mode where they often check back. Talking about pocket eights. So, that is an aside. We see a big bet, we see a call, we can move on to the turn. Turn is the ace of hearts, full rainbow board. Kyan checks, and Darrell goes with another 75% bet. Here the sizing on the turn is actually more nuanced and maybe in a way more accurate than the sizing on the flop, because while on the flop you can kind of do anything, on the turn we now have two much narrower, more well-defined ranges. And very often there are sizings that fit better or worse. On the ace, the 75% size, I think first of all, indicates that you can value bet worse than an ace. Like if we start seeing 2x pot huge sizes, obviously that can't be worse than an ace, but also on this ace-high board, I'm not sure it could even be or not in a very clean way top pair, top kicker type of hand. You'd start getting into the 2-pair plus area because, and this is where it gets a bit nuanced, out of position makes a lot of new top range on the ace, right? It's ace deuce, and because these guys are deep pre-flop, he probably hits ace 9 and maybe sometimes even ace 10. Because as you get deeper, the offsuit hands start 3-betting a bit less in favor of more playability. These kind of things, you know, if you switch around the positions and it's cutoff versus big blind or any position pair, the way the run out interacts with ranges is different. But you don't really have a very wide value range that's interested in going for stacks. So it makes a ton of sense to go 75% and then you can probably bet like maybe king 10, queen 10, jack 10 even. And you guys might ask, well, doesn't our opponent improve a lot on the ace? How can you bet at 10? And the answer would be, again, and this is where you put all the puzzle pieces together, that when you bet flop big, your opponent isn't calling with every ace that he has. It's heads up, so ace-jack plus or 3-betting pre-flop. Suited ace is often 3-bet pre-flop, and certainly ace-8 off is not good enough to call. So other than 2 pairs, the ace is kind of a brick, and you can keep barreling it very, very aggressively. So keeping all of this in mind, Kyan decides to check raise. Now, given how I discussed the ranges and how wide the betting range is for 75%, now that we understand this, we do understand that Kyan can probably check raise his 2 pairs. For value, and we'd expect some bluffs which, there's no flush draw, so mostly straight draws, stuff like 7, 8, Jack 8, Queen Jack give you plenty of bluffs to choose from. Yeah, Darrell decides to make the call. Both ranges, I think, are somewhat well defined, but also a bit wide. Cayenne's range is kind of more narrowly defined, whereas Darrell can have all the draws and a decent amount of pairs better than a 10, and he's going to fold some, call some of his value betting range, of course. So we get the 8 river. Always ask yourself about the river. How does it connect and interact with everything? Right. So if Cayenne's bluffs were 7, 8, Jack 8, and Queen Jack, I'm not saying they are, but those would be the first ones that come to mind. Queen Jack just improved, and 7, 8, and Jack 8 improved to a bad pair, and there is actually a decent chance they will keep bluffing in this configuration. So, kind of the way I perceive it, and Jack 7 and 6, 7 being gut shots, I don't think should be making the turn check raising range. So when Cayenne shoves the river, you might say, let's do some primitive combo counting, right? And let's actually try to figure out together, in a very, very naive way, if he check raises all his open-enders and barrels them, and all his 2 pairs and barrels everything on the river, is he over-bluffing or under-bluffing for a pot-sized bet? So, roughly pot-sized bet means a 2-to-1 value to bluff ratio, and all we need to do is a very, very simple combo count. We can do this in a notepad. You don't need any special program, although Notepad is a bit of a special program. So, basically, we put the bluffing range, which would be Jack 8 and 7, 8. Here we have, it's heads up, so presumably offsuit. I'm not doing this 100% accurately because 7, 8 offsuit might 3-bet and stuff like that. But yeah, let's say that there's an 8 on the board, so 3 8s left, so this would be 12 plus 12. Some of these 7 8s 3-bet, so let's make it roughly 22 bluffing combos. Okay. Value range, we'd have Queen Jack, only offsuit, suited would certainly 3-bet. It's 12. We have Ace 10 off, Ace 9 off, and Ace Deuce off. Where here, I think it's fair to say Ace Deuce off would probably not be shoving the river. And Ace 10 off might sometimes 3-bet, but let's say never, for argument's sake. And here there's a 9 and an Ace on the board, so this is each 9, so together 18 combos. And if you think of the ranges as roughly like this, we have 30 value and 22 bluff, and this is kind of maybe one of the best case scenarios for bluff catching, right? Where if your opponent kind of fires everything, he's over bluffing, and he needs to start giving up bluffs. Now, it could be on the turn, it could be on the river, and calibrate this so that he's roughly balanced, and that, guys, is very, very tough to do in-game, although I can say, from personal experience of working with a bunch of crushers, there are definitely high-stakes players who get here and go in their head, oh, blah, blah, no, this many combos, and they actually understand how to do this in-game during the hand and actually count the combos. There are people, more than you'd think, at high stakes who are capable of doing that. I can say I personally am not one of them. I kind of fudge things more and go the more exploitative route. So yeah, this doesn't tell us whether Cayenne is over-bluffing or under-bluffing, but it does tell us he might be over-bluffing, right? Like, there is a possibility. Whereas if we'd gotten a different result, maybe we'd get that it's very difficult to overbluff. Here it's reasonable to overbluff, it's reasonable to be balanced. Not a very clear spot in that regard. So, face a river shove, Darrell goes into the tank and decides to make the call, and we see a showdown. So Cayenne has 9-6 offsuit. Now, you guys just saw me go through the entire map, and we see a hand that is not in there. And the first question you should ask yourself is, should the hand be there? Right? Is my simplistic analysis correct or not? And it's an important question when you see a high-stakes player make a play like this. And the truth is, I guess the truth might surprise you guys, but let's start with, do you want to check raise a turn with a 9? I think the answer is that it's reasonable to do it. Right? And the idea is that you do block some of the top range of your opponent on the one hand. And on the other hand, if the river breaks out, you can check and win a showdown versus sometimes king, queen, queen, jack, jack, 8, 7, 8, and if some of those bluff, maybe you can bluff catch. So 9-6 definitely, I'm not saying I wouldn't pick the 6 kicker personally, and I'm not saying this is GTO, but it's not very far off to do this sometimes on a turn. Now, if we get to the river, you can ask, well, should 9-6 bluff the river? And if you guys are still looking at my notepad, you might say, well, you have enough bluffs without 9-6, just fire 7, 8, and jack 8. You're already over bluffing, so why bluff at 9? And it's a good question. First of all, like we said, no guarantee that every 7, 8, and jack 8 get to the river. And if Cayenne is constructing his range well, he's not getting to the river with all of those. Some of them are check raising flop, some of them are calling the turn. Both of those perfectly reasonable plays to make. So don't go counting his combos for him, and maybe this is fine in that sense. But you can also ask, would you rather bluff river with 9-6 or 7-8? It's also a good question, because 7-8 doesn't block your opponent's value region, like that it doesn't block him from having a set or 2-pair or anything like that. And it actually blocks some of his folding hands, assuming Darrell is on the river folding his own 7-8 and jack 8. So despite having lower showdown value, it's not a good bluffing combo in terms of the blockers themselves. Whereas 9-6 is a lot better, not blocking folding range, it is blocking pocket 9s and ace 9. And 10-9 in case that's relevant. But I think just it has a bit more showdown, that's true. But I wouldn't be surprised if this hand is actually played okay by Cayenne. Like, I know it looks nuts, and it is nuts, but there's a reason to the madness, so to speak. And yeah, if you look at Darrell's hand, pocket kings, we can say that flop makes sense, turn makes sense. Calling the check raise I can get behind. You're drawing to 2 kings to make a set. Not perfect, but definitely a hand that can call. And then calling on the river, if you ask me, this is not a GTO call, right? You want to have some interaction with your opponent's value range, and that's very easy to do. I mean, granted, kings doesn't block bluffs, but you can do better than this in terms of calls, and you don't have to dig this far. It's easy to just have an ace in your hand, or a 10 in your hand, or a queen in your hand. Like, all of these things are very easily doable, so I don't think this is a GTO call. It's more of an exploitative call. And, Darrell's tanking here, and maybe he's going through something similar to what I'm showing you guys. And, these guys have their dynamics. He's like, this guy's fairly aggro. I think he's probably, maybe he's not going as thin as ace 9 because of the straights got there, and I think he's just overdoing it, and clicks called you to that, if you ask me. Now, was Cayenne overdoing it or not? First instinct upon seeing the 9-6 off would be he was, but that's actually not clear. Like we said, some draws check raise flop. Maybe he's giving up some 8s on the river. Like, there are a lot of question marks here about who owned who in this hand. Certainly, it looks like Darrell owned, but maybe Cayenne was being kind of balanced, and Darrell made a bad call. So yeah, I think fairly interesting hand. Hope you guys enjoyed it and learned something new. If you did, please like and subscribe to the channel. Let me know what you think in the comments, and I'll see you guys next time.